Hi, I'm Kristen. I'm Linda's niece, and I am the owner of the Bumbling Bee Flower Farm. We are a cut flower farm in Pennsylvania. We are Zone 6A, and we grow cut flowers for all occasions, weddings, funerals, everyday events in northwestern Pennsylvania on about a half of an acre. We started the farm about 5 years ago. So today I just want to talk about our seed starting process. We're down today in my seed starting room and give you a couple little tips and tricks for seed starting that you can apply to your own garden. Now, I start thousands of seeds a year. Each one of these trays has about 200 seeds in it. I already have trays out ready to get planted, and I'm going to be starting more this week. We start seeds from January 1st all the way up until about September. We're starting seeds every single week. So we grow thousands and thousands of seeds. So why do we do it? Number one, we like to save money. It's very expensive to buy flats of seeds already ready to go, flats of plants already ready to go. The other reason why we like to do it is we can control what varieties we're growing. So we like to grow a lot of unique varieties, things that you can't find in the stores. And those just aren't available in the garden shops. So we buy a lot of our seeds from Johnny's Seeds, which they're wonderful. And they have a ton of varieties, a ton of colors, tons of stuff that you just can't find. So it also starts our season a little earlier. If we were just direct seeding everything out into the field, everything would start a couple weeks later. So it gets us a jump start on our season. And we also get to control the environment. So we don't use any pesticides on our farm. I think that's very important. And if you're buying plants that are already started at the garden centers, they might be treated with something that you're not comfortable with in your garden. Pesticides, inorganic fertilizers, you don't even know what kind of dirt they're grown in. So this is just one way that we like to control not using pesticides on our farm. So what's the most important thing about seed starting is know your seeds. Every seed has a slightly different condition that it wants to grow in. So it's very important to know what kind of seed you're growing, what they require for germination. That could be if they need light, if they need heat, if they need to be wet, if they need to be a little drier. That's very important to keep in mind. Are they a direct seed, which is something you could just seed right out in the garden, or do they need to be started indoors? So there are certain seeds that would do much better if you just planted them directly into your garden. For us, that is sunflowers, zinnias, cosmos, marigolds. We grow a lot of forget-me-nots that we grow right out in the garden. All of our Ami we grow straight out in the garden. There are also seeds that have to be started inside because they just won't germinate very well outside. And that for us are snapdragons, feverfew, sweet William plants. We grow all of those inside first and transplant them out. The most important thing is do what's best for the seed. And then, do your seeds need cold stratification? Some seeds need a week or two in the freezer. Some of them need 6 months in the refrigerator. So that is knowing your seed. So if you're saying, well, how am I supposed to know? I just buy the packets at the store and they all say the same thing. Even if you don't buy seeds from Johnny's, which is our favorite place to get seeds from, I would highly recommend perusing their website. They have a wonderful resource with each kind of seed. It doesn't matter if you're looking at vegetable seeds, herb seeds, flower seeds, whatever you're looking at, right on their website, it will tell you if it's what kind of temperature it needs to germinate, how many days it needs to germinate, if it's recommended to be planted inside first and then transplanted out, or direct seeded right into the garden, what kind of light it needs, what kind of height it gets, what kind of spacing it needs, and then what hardiness zone. If it's a perennial plant, if it's an annual plant, that doesn't matter. And what's also nice about Johnny's, if you buy seeds from them, they have all that information listed right on the back. So also getting to know your seeds, get to know what grows well in your area. Visit other gardens, see what other people are growing. There are a lot of seeds that we could grow up here in the north that just don't grow very well in the south, and vice versa. We cannot grow okra up here very well. It just doesn't get very hot for us. Maybe down in the south you don't grow very good sweet peas. I'm not sure. Don't know Texas. But I know that they are a very cool, loving plant, so if it gets too hot down there, they might not be one that works very well for you. Just know your area, visit other gardeners, visit the garden stores, see what kind of grows, and then just experiment. You could buy a pack of seeds for very inexpensive, follow the directions very carefully, and see if it grows well for you. Another way to prepare for success with seed starting is to have a good setup. Now, you don't have to have a huge setup like what we have here. Any area will do as long as you have outlets nearby, because you will need to put in lights. And we also use heat mats on our seedlings, which I think are very important. We'll talk about that in a minute. Water nearby is helpful. It's not required, but it is something that is helpful. We actually put in a faucet and a hose in our area so I can just hose everything down. You don't have to get that technical. But if it's all the way across your house to the nearest faucet or down in the basement and the only water is upstairs, it might be something to consider moving your seed area to somewhere where it's a little bit more convenient. And a warm place is better than a cool place. It doesn't have to be hot, but most seedlings germinate better when it's warm. And the temperature of the soil is generally about 10 degrees colder than your air temperature. So if it's 60 in your seed starting area, you can assume that your dirt is going to be about 50 degrees. There's not a whole lot of seeds that will germinate well in 50 degrees. You'll need some kind of a shelf. It's nice if they're adjustable. Mine are not adjustable, but it's nice if you can adjust your shelves or adjust your lights. Which is the next thing that you'll need, are grow lights. They don't have to be actual grow lights. They can just be an LED light. The higher the watts, the better. But for a 4-foot light, we try to stay around 40 watts. I have 2 sets of lights. I have these higher ones and these lower ones. The higher ones were not giving off enough light, so I got the lower ones. I lowered them way, way, way down so they're very close to the top of our seedlings. And that's something also that you need to keep into consideration. The light needs to be incredibly close to the seedlings when they're just getting started. I would not recommend growing seedlings in a southern facing window. They just don't get enough light and you'll get leggy seedlings. What else do you need? We use heat mats on our seedlings, which is this black cord right here. It's just a flat black heat, plugs right in. It warms the soil just slightly. It's only a couple degrees warmer, but it gets our seedlings going quicker. And then any kind of container that you want for growing. These are 10-20 trays. They're 10 inches by 20 inches. They're standard tray. But you can use anything. I grow a lot of seedlings inside of Chinese food containers. Anything that has about 2 inches of dirt in the bottom of it, because your seedling will grow the roots down. So like an egg carton is probably not great, but like a red Solo cup would be fine. Like I said, Chinese food containers, those tin containers that you get to cook your turkey in on Thanksgiving, anything like that that's going to give you a large kind of flat area that you could put at least 2 inches of dirt in. And then along with that, it's nice to have a dome on top. That's why I like Chinese food containers, because they have the dome already built in. If you can't get a dome, you could also use plastic wrap. The other thing that you're going to need to start your seeds is some kind of soil media to put the seeds in. It does not have to be seed starting mix. We actually use potting soil for everything that we use. Just keep in mind that this is all the nutrition that your plants are going to get, other than when you fertilize them. So don't cheap out on the soil media. Always moisten your media a little bit before you put them in the trays. Soil media a lot of times is very water phobic. It has a hard time sucking in the moisture after the after the soil is in the tray. So if you moisten it just a little bit before you put it in the tray, it's very helpful. And then firm in your seed starting mix before you put your seeds in it. The worst thing that you could do is have a big air pocket in your soil, so when the roots grow down, it's hitting a big pocket of air, because that will kill the roots. They need soil around them at all times. So what I like to do is I fill my tray up and I take an empty tray and put it on top and I push down, push down, push down really, really hard so that compacts all the soil media in. If you're using any kind of container, if you had another container, you could put on top and just push it, push it, push it. So it's nice and compacted. It doesn't have to be like a brick of concrete or anything because you want some room for the roots to grow down through, but it needs to be no big air pockets in there. And then make sure that you follow whatever your seed requires. So if that's planting it on top to let light germinate, if that's putting a 1/4 of an inch of dirt over top of that, if it needs a heat mat, if it needs covered, uncovered, make sure that you're following whatever recommendations are required for that specific seed. And then we cover almost all of our seedlings with a dome or a plastic wrap. I prefer a dome. But whatever you have is great. That just holds the moisture in until it's germinated. And then a heat mat if it's required until it's mostly germinated. That's 75% for the dome and the heat mat. As soon as you hit 75% germination, you take that dome off and you take it off the heat, because the dome is going to restrict airflow around it and the heat is going to grow bacteria. And that's the worst thing that you could do for your seedlings, is restrict the airflow and then grow bacteria, because what's going to happen is they're going to damp off, which is just a bacterial infection that is in your plant seeds. When they get an inch or two tall, the stem will break. It'll get real spindly looking, it'll get real weak, and then the plant will fall over and it'll die. Best way to keep that away from it is to take off the dome, take off the heat. A light fan is also very helpful, but just keep in mind, if you have a fan going, you need to be checking to make sure that you don't need to water more than once a day. We try to water everything once a day. If it's taking more than once a day, then we need to adjust. We either need to water it heavier when we water that night, or we need to take it away from the fan so it doesn't dry out so quickly. So what are other things that could happen to your seedlings to make them not successful other than damping off? Leggy plants, which is the light is too far away from the actual seedling, or growing them in a windowsill. You'll get plants that have a big tall stem and then just a little floof of leaves on top. When you go to plant those outside, they might look like they're damping off, but they aren't. It's because there's not enough, you didn't give them enough light while they were baby plants. So the plant will hit a big growth spurt and then fall over and die. So you really need to make sure that your lights are as close to the seedlings as possible, and then you just keep moving the lights up as the seedlings get a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger. The other thing that we're actually battling right now, if you could see it right there, is fungus gnats. Fungus gnats are common in potting soil, in seed starting soil, especially seed starting soil that's been stored inside. And they're just a little fly bug. I'm sure everybody has seen them that just fly around. But the larva will actually eat the roots of the plant. So if you have a bad infestation like we have right now, we're losing seedlings every once in a while because they'll eat the roots off the bottom of the plant. The next issue is poor germination, and this could be a couple different things. One, you could have old seed. Seed really is perishable. If you're not going to use it the year that you have bought it, we recommend that you put it in some kind of an airtight container, either a glass jar, or we use these photo holding pockets that just hold all of our seed, and then we like to label them to say what kind of seed we have in them. And then they need to be stored in the cool and in the dark. You can put them in your refrigerator. Some seed likes the freezer. You have to be kind of careful with that though, because some seed can't freeze. But generally, like under 75 degrees, don't store them in your garage in Houston. They will all not be good next year. And keep them out of the sun, because the sun really does degrade them very, very quickly. So after you've grown your seedlings and they're looking great and you're ready to plant them out, the next step is to harden them off. Now that is just taking them outside. Be very, very careful with them. Not letting them get too much sun, but they need a little bit of sun, a little bit of heat until they're acclimated to the outside, and then you're ready to plant them. Hardening off, we usually try it for about a week. We put ours inside of a unheated hoop house, which is just a tunnel, and make sure that we're watering them every single day. And they're out of the direct sun. They get half a day of sun and half a day of shade, and then we can plant them right out in the field. When you do plant them out, you have to be very, very sure that you're watering them at least every day for a week or so until they get really established. One other hot tip I'll share with you is always make sure that you are labeling your plants. I always think, I'll know what it is. I know that it'll be a zinnia or a snapdragon, but I never know what color it is. I never know what variety it is, and then I don't know what they are the next year when I go to plant them, when I go to grow them again. What was that one that I really liked? You got to label everything. So we use little plastic labels. You could use popsicle sticks. You could use just about anything. We see people cut apart old mini blinds and stick those in the dirt. Anything that's durable enough that will last you the season. But the most important part is not to use a Sharpie or a pencil on these tags, because it will fade, especially in Houston where the sun is very bright. You need to use a garden marker. And these are specially formulated that they don't disintegrate in the UV light, so make sure that you are labeling what your plants are so you know what they are, and if you like them then you can grow them again, and if you didn't like them then you don't have to grow them again. If any of you are interested in tips for seed starting, especially flower seeds, we do have a TikTok channel that I post on quite frequently about seed starting, mostly flowers. I don't grow a whole lot of veggies anymore, but I'll post on there a couple times a week what I'm starting and how I start it, and then how I plant them out. And then I also show in the summertime us harvesting crops. I have a couple videos on making bridal bouquets. So just a lot of general farming knowledge, flower farming knowledge. And that's at Bumbling Bee Flowers, which is the same on Instagram and on Facebook if you're interested in following along on our little cut flower farm. So thank you all for having me. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to reach out. The email is bumblingbeeflowers@gmail.com, and I'm always happy to answer any questions that I can.